the event that we host, the Chosen Few Old School Picnic. It's in the summer, is going to be a part of the scene tonight. So I want us to get in, get out. For those of you that don't know, I am Leslie Hairston. I am the Alderman of the 5th Ward. I know that some of you may be residents of the 7th Ward or the 8th Ward, but because this concerns Dominick in South Shore, I decided to reach out to everyone in the 60649 area code, and that's why you all got the calls, because this really is about community, and I want to make sure that we get the information, accurately, that we have an opportunity to ask questions to the people who can actually give you the correct answers. Before we get started, I just want to say we do have a list of our ward meetings, our monthly ward meetings. If you didn't get one, it is at the table. And we do have, you might see around the neighborhood, we're doing a lot of stuff with people's gas. They're updating the infrastructure in the neighborhood. And then there is another handout about the 71st Street streetscape, which we have a presentation. Today is the first day of spring, which means that it's construction season in the city of Chicago, and it is also construction season right here. But I am pleased to announce that finally, after many years, we are going to get a new 71st Street. So we're going to update you on that and remind you what the community selected several years ago and what's going to be happening this year. Ever since Safeway announced that they were going to close all of their grocery stores in the state, I've been actively engaged with the owners of Jeffrey Plaza, the real estate brokers, developers, grocery store chains, and independent grocers, as well as the community. I've worked with the Mayor's Grocery Store Task Force to put the full strength of the city and its resources to bring a grocer to Jeffrey Plaza. The mayor and I have personally made phone calls. I've held and attended numerous meetings with the deputy mayor, the Department of Planning and Development, the commissioner, as well as the grocers, and I've also conducted site visits to many grocery stores. I'm here tonight to provide you with an update on the Dominick site in Jeffrey Plaza and the status of Urban Partnership Bank that stands on the northwest corner of 71st and Jeffrey. Jeffrey Plaza is owned by a group of investors in Los Angeles. Dominick's was a tenant in Jeffrey Plaza and has a lease through May of 2015. While the lease agreement requires Dominick's to pay rent through the end of its lease term, the owners, the community, nor I want that space vacant. The approximate size of the space is 62,000 square feet. Media reports that there are no grocers interested in the site. They are incorrect. There are still many grocers actively pursuing this location. While I am not happy that this is the last site in the city without a user, this site brings a little bit something more to our community. This is a lease arrangement, and it is not the sale of a building. Many stores in the city were purchased. They were not leased. This is also an older store. Some of the issues that potential users are considering when looking at this site are the condition of the building, whether to lease or buy the whole shopping center, which would be, I think, around the range of $27 million. The cost of building out the store. Because when anybody goes into a store, they're going to have to, just like when you move into a house, you do upgrades and you improve it. That's what they have to do. They have to look at the cost of new freezers, of new shelving and equipment, the lease term, and of course, the amount of the lease. At the end of the day, it's really about the total amount of money that has to be spent before the doors can even open. Present tonight, we're going to have Ken Bennett from the Mayor's Office, and he is Chief of Staff and Director of Public Engagement. We have representing the owners of Jeffrey Plaza, we have Vladimir Gans, Alderman, would you raise your hand? And John Negus, they are also the brokers for that site. We will allow them to speak after the streetscape presentation, and you will have an opportunity to ask your questions directly. And I have also talked to an independent grocer to have him present a concept that he brought to us that he had used here in the city some time ago and is interested in bringing back. Some of the other stores that we've looked at, we talked to David Cody of Sterling Fresh Foods in New Orleans, and he has an urban concept that was presented to me yesterday at a meeting by the South Shore Planning Coalition. So I see it's here tonight, so thank you all for being here. The stores are and will remain 25,000 square feet, this concept that they have, and they're looking to expand 3 stores over the next few years. They said that they were looking in the areas that were closest to them, and they're leaning towards the Northeast region. And so they talked about the price of our location and said it is higher than what they normally accommodate, but we will still continue to try to pique their interest. I've met with Pete's Fresh Produce on many occasions. There have been multiple discussions excuse me, with the Commissioner of Planning and Development and the brokers, as well as the owners of Jeffrey Plaza. I've spoken with Ultra Foods, reached out to Paul Gutierrez Jr. of the Piggly Wiggly grocery line, and Publix, who have stores in other states. As you can see, there's a lot of interest in 71st and Jeffrey. Let's be clear, this will take some time. Just like the other stores that were acquired, it will take some time to make some improvements before a store is able to open there. So, with that, I want to start off with Janet Natarian and from the city and to talk about the streetscape. She has to go for a family matter, so I moved them to the front. I hope you do not mind. And then we will bring Vladimir and John up to talk more about the grocers that they talked to, the stores that they talked to, and to answer your questions. Janet?
Thank you very much, Alderman. Hopefully this will be sort of a good way to launch this larger discussion to talk a little bit about the streetscape. First, I want to talk about some of the folks I have with me here today. Hannah Higgins here is the project manager on this project, and we actually have some folks here from the construction team. And Marty, you want to take it up? Ken's already, and Marty's with a contractor, Ken Janet, who's going to be the contractor on this project. So I wanted to introduce you. You'll be seeing them around the site once we get started, which we will be doing shortly, and I'll be talking a little bit about the schedule too. So, as the Alderman mentioned, we've been talking about this project for a long time. We're very excited to get it started. Probably many of you are familiar with the concept. I'm going to spend a little time just sort of reminding everybody what the scope of the work is, and then I'm going to spend a little time talking about the upcoming construction, how it will impact the operations of the street, where we're going to start, and some other information. So, the 71st Street Streetscape, the current phase, is from South Shore Drive to Jeffrey. And it was divided into 2 phases. But the first phase is the entire length of the project and focuses on the parkway. And I'll show you some images of that. And really getting the parkway and the pedestrian space along the parkway, all of it stuff, and updated infrastructure. And the second phase is the middle of the street and some work that we had planned to do along the metro tracks and along the road and putting in the bike lanes and those other things. So this first phase, as you can see from this rendering right here, really focuses on the parkway and getting in all the new lights and the ADA and the new sidewalk and all beautification along the sidewalk. And those elements include, for the next image, several items. One of the big ones, obviously, is all new street lighting. We are putting in Chicago what we call the Gateway 2000s, which, if you can see sort of in the middle of that montage of the banners, that smaller pole, thanks, Hannah, that's the gateway picture, and that will be at the intersection and And in between all of those poles, as you can see directly to the left of that image, is going to be the pedestrian poles that are going to be along there. We're also going to obviously be putting in all new sidewalk along with that, all new curb and gutter. We're going to be putting in decorative permeable pavers in the parkway area of the sidewalk, along with all new trees and tree grates. So there'll be quite a bit of additional landscaping. Working with the local community, we're putting in the hanging baskets on all of the gateway poles, those taller poles, so they're going to be the hanging baskets with flowers. We're putting in street furniture like benches and bike racks, and we are, of course, updating all of the ADA compliance around all of the intersections. So in terms of the construction, we are now at that point where we are going to be starting. We will be starting really in the next few weeks. We hope for work to begin. I see a couple were over snow. So, where we did, but it was not enough to stop construction. Hopefully the kind of snow that might make construction difficult, hopefully we're over that. So anyway, there's two sort of ways we like to approach these types of projects to make them efficient, but also limit the impact on the community while we're doing the work. And so it's basically a rolling operation where we start at one side of the street, at one end of the project. We allow the contractor to have approximately 2 to 3 blocks at a time, and they sort of have to button that up to a certain extent before they can sort of roll, if you will, down the street to those next 2 or 3 blocks. And then they switch over to the other side of the street and work their way back the other way around. And we have found that this is a very efficient way to allow for some parking to remain on the street while work is progressing, to make sure that we don't just have an open site that's sort of ripped up from one end to the other, and to make sure that the contractors are buttoning up the work as they go and sort of moving in a progressive way. And so this job, we're going to start on the south side at Jeffrey. That will be where we're starting, and we will be moving to the east and then flipping over and then coming back on the street. That's pretty much the sort of big picture of the project. Obviously, where we're actually working, there will be restrictions on both the pedestrian access and on the parking, but we try to minimize both of those. Obviously, one of our goals is to make sure that the street is open to traffic and to pedestrians at all times. To do that, we do a couple of things. It may be a little bit hard to see in this slide, but we basically take the sort of from the building line all the way out across the sidewalk into the parking lane. It's pretty much sort of our work zone, if you will. And what we do is we look at that work zone, we divide it up so that we can always maintain pedestrian access. And because the vehicle lanes pretty much stay untouched, there's always the vehicle access. So the two big impacts are that where we're doing the work, because we do need that parking lane for staging, there is a loss of parking. And then the second major impact is that the pedestrian space, which will always be maintained pedestrian access, but it will move around. So what we'd like to do is basically split the sidewalk almost in half, think of that, like that. Do that section of sidewalk up against the buildings right away, so we get that done out of the way. Even while we're doing work, we'll have bridge access to the individual buildings. We like to work with the businesses, understand what's their time frame of operation, see if we can pick times to actually pour concrete that's least disruptive to everybody. And while that work is going on, the sort of parkway / parking lane is available for us to put pedestrians in to keep that movement going. As soon as we do that, we then flip the pedestrians back to the space where they really want to be, which is right up against the buildings. That's best for the businesses. They can have access directly into the businesses. And then we take that space that's basically the parkway and the parking lane and use that as our working zone. And that's where we have the operations that take more time, because we have to put in that new conduit for the lighting and the new lighting foundations and stuff for the new trees. And there's more work. So that section takes a little bit longer, but we have that new walk up against the buildings that's available for pedestrians, access to businesses, sort of finish up what we need to do in the parkway, before that sidewalk, get that done. And when that's done, then we roll to those next couple of blocks. And that's sort of a rolling operation that we do as we work our way sort of down one side of the street to the other. We try to be as flexible as possible for parking. You know, we need to have that space for the construction activities. We sometimes have to store materials. But, you know, if we can open it back up a little bit after hours, we try to do those types of things and be as flexible as possible. There are some other things that I think are really important to know. One thing, I think most of you probably picked it up and all of you mentioned it. We do have these flyers. They tell you many of the things I'm telling you right now, but we will also pass those out right before we start, about a week before we start. We will actually walk down the street and hand those out to everybody, because we find no matter how many times you say it, we sort of give you that final reminder right beforehand. So you guys all got an early version, early quick look at that, but we'll be handing those out to anybody who's right on 71st Street. We'll also have a field office right on the project site. There will be someone from the construction team, the RE team, there all the time pretty much when we're doing work. We will have weekly construction meetings. There will be a period of that meeting where it's open to the public. So anybody who has a concern can come. This is really helpful, we find, for a business maybe that needs to have a special delivery while we're in construction. Or we've had businesses move out or win during work. And we can usually accommodate all those things as long as we know. So it's really a good place to touch base if you've got something special going on. Come to that meeting, say, hey, I've got this, I've got that. Is there some way we can work around this? And usually we can accommodate almost anything if we have a chance to actually plan for it. So that's another information. Then if we learn more, we'll let people know that in the future. Actually, can we go back? So yeah, and then, and the last part is the parking. So I talked about that. So trying to allow that parking, even though it will say no parking, basically if during the full time we're not working, while we are working in that area, and giving it some flexibility. And then finally, this project actually was the first project that the city implemented with the neighborhood hiring ordinance. So we're really excited about that. Like all of our projects, there's a 50% city residency requirement, and then there are MBE and WBE requirements. But then in addition, this project has a local hiring requirement where 7.5% of the working hours have to go to folks who live in the areas, and I know this is it changes the color a little bit, but if you can see those sort of red lines that are outlined there, it's defined by community areas. So it's the Hyde Park and the Woodlawn and the South Shore community areas. Those three areas, 7.5% of the hours have to come from folks that live in those areas. Of the hours. So this is the number, but if the job had 1,000 hours, let's say, to do this job, 7.5% of the hours have to go to folks who live in those areas. And I think with that, I'm going to sort of end our presentation. I'm going to open up the question on the streetscape right now. So if anybody has any questions around the streetscape, certainly I'm willing to answer any questions. Yes. Thank you. I forgot to mention that. I mentioned. Yeah, very good question. So the question was, when's the work supposed to start and when is it going to end? So I don't know that we have an exact date at this point, but we really expect it to start in the first 2 weeks of April. I think around the second week of April is when we're hoping to start. And pretty much work will continue through Thanksgiving. Yes?
You mentioned bike lanes. Are you planning on putting bike lanes down 71st?
So that was something that was decided in the design process, but it is part of the second phase, so it's not being implemented as part of this phase of the project.
What will that do in terms of congestion? Because if there's going to be parking, bike lanes, and a single lane of traffic, and then, you know, people going in and out of the businesses.
Right.
That's going to be pretty congested.
Yeah,
one
so
lane.
we had quite a few public meetings back in the day on this project, and we actually did a I'm sorry, I want to question. She's asking questions about the bike lane and the impact it would have on 71st Street and the operations. So when we were doing the public meetings for this project, we had many discussions around bike lane, yes bike lane, no bike lane, potential bike lane. We actually did do a survey monkey with the community and had a vote. And this combination was the combination that everyone at the time, the majority of folks said made sense. I didn't spend a lot of time in this presentation going over that, but the second phase of work includes both a landscape median along the tracks, and it includes the bike lane. And there's a lot about rationalizing the traffic movement on 71st Street, because one of the issues right now is 71st Street really doesn't have any striping. So from a driver's perspective, there's a lot of confusion about one lane, two lane, it narrows down when you get to the intersections often. So we went through that process, and I'm certainly more than willing to talk to you a little bit more about that afterwards if you want to. And we still have a process for the second phase. Yes?
Will there be parking meters placed along 71st Street with this project?
So we're not removing any parking as part of this project. During construction, we are going to have to remove parking where we're doing work. So in about a 2 to 3 block area.
That wasn't the question. The question was, will there be parking meters?
Oh, we're not installing part of the parking meters. I'm sorry, I just went to parking. Yeah, the question was about parking meters. We're not changing the parking meters. In the back? On this project, it has never been facilities. Certainly, I think it's been both the Alderman and the community's goal to do that. We only had so much funding available, so we had to take it in phases. Right, so yeah, she's asking about hiring for folks in the area. So that last line, there's a requirement of the contractor to have 7.5% of the total work hours hired for those communities. Marty? Yeah. I'm sorry. That's 7.5% of the total hours of the job. So that gets into a much larger discussion that was part of the ordinance that was passed by the city. There's also a 50% for the city, and you have to have 50% of the workforce from the city of Chicago. And then there are also minority and women-owned requirements on the contractor, and then there's an additional local hire. Yes?
Typically, what happens after you've done a beautiful streetscape, and a utility company comes by and redigs up everything that's done.
I have seen it.
You're going to make sure that that's coordinated before the streetscaping is completed, so that doesn't occur.
Well, ComEd has already been in there. We've got Metro and everybody got them in over the summer now so that they would not come in after the streetscape was done and tear it up. So that's why it's taking so much longer, because we wanted anybody that needed to go in, go underground, with the exception of the water department, to come in and get the work done before we did the streetscape project.
Yeah, we have been working very closely with the utilities, letting them know this is coming and that it can work. Obviously, there's always emergencies and stuff, but we also moratorium all these streets so that if somebody does then need to get in, they actually have to come to us. They have to get a special permission. They have to explain how they're going to fix everything that they do if there's for some emergency reason that they do have to get in. So we do work very hard to try to minimize that.
I think the follow-up on this young man's question, he knows they're not going to be parking meters, but there's going to be paid parking on 71st Street. We're going to have paid parking machines.
We are not changing any parking. They are not adding any parking meters over here. Whatever is there now will remain. Nothing new will be added. This is not a
Yes?
Are the businesses along 71st Street, are they being given any incentive to have sort of a refreshing facade on their businesses or any continuity of look? What's the decision we're
Well, that has always been the case. They've always had the option to do that. Some have chosen, most have not chosen to make those improvements. What we did on 71st Street is we created a special service area designation, which is special service area number 42. And what that does is it takes a portion of their property taxes and puts it in a fund to be reinvested directly into the community. And so that's what they've been doing. The people that you see in the morning cleaning the metro trash, that are picking up the trash, that comes from the money that they pay to their property taxes that go into the SSA. The banners that you see, the street, the new decorative garbage bins, the big belly garbage bins that people don't know what they are, they look like library book depositories. Well, those are actually solar garbage cans. That are the types of things that the SSA pays for. There's still a variety of city programs that if any of the businesses wanted to, they could. I know that the South Shore Chamber has been working on uniform signage for 71st Street. Hopefully we will have that up and running by the time this project is done. So, yes.
Yes, so the contractor has already over here is actually with the contractor, Pano Chianic. It was done through a competitive bidding process, and already going to come up.
My name is Marty. I'm the General Superintendent for Pano Chianic. We have been awarded this project, and we're pretty excited to do it. In answer to your question about neighborhood hiring, we are in the process of working with the alderman here and everybody else in the neighborhood. We are accepting applications in our office for people to work on this project from the neighborhood. We're going to make them partners. Our office is at 8501 South Cumberland, right near the airport. I'll leave business card. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. I have it all purpose here. We are ready. Okay, the construction office will be at 71st Street between Exchange and Yates. Okay, applicants can go in there. I'll have a stack of applications there for future employees to fill out. We are a union contractor. This is a union job. Labor's union, local 150 operators union, electrical unions.
I'm going to ask him to do one thing, to give us a